I suppose the first thing that struck me listening by the second paper, in fact, was the way in which the child is such a privileged figure through which to undertake interdisciplinary work. I mean, thinking about methods, I mean, the child is ubiquitous everywhere, in every medium, in every discourse. So it's a way of bringing different disciplines together, and that's probably just the most obvious comment, but in many ways the most difficult, because then we immediately get into the question not only what is a child in these different disciplines, but what do these different disciplines do with the child, and then what do these different disciplines do with each other, doing things to the child. And I think that one of the most interesting moments in the last hour and a half has been the sudden convergence between what Pam was saying about strategies of reading in the literary humanities, where, you know, she said it almost en passant, you know, Henry James, when you hear the word free, it means bad. You know, these words do not mean what they appear to mean. And then, yet it's saying what we need to make are extraordinary words. There was that, I didn't write down the quote, but the person that you were quoting talking about what we need are not applied concepts, but concepts working together almost to make a new language. And I suppose one of my questions to the speakers is, you know, is there something about studying the child or thinking about the child, thinking about adolescence, this wonderfully transitional figure between childhood and adulthood? Is there something about studying this figure that makes us think about language, makes us think about rhetoric and discourse? That's one question I had. The other thing that kept going through my mind, I think because of the emphasis on cinema and time travel, and the lights are going out, which is I think you have to wave your hands in this building, was a little episode from Shane Meadows' film, The Last of England, I think it's called. I can't remember the title. This is England. And it's a wonderful little scene where Shane, I think that's his name, or Sean, the protagonist, is in a little romantic interlude with a 15 or 16-year-old girl, and he's 10. And she says something to him like, you know, you might look about 4, but you kiss like you're 40. And it's one of those minutes where you sort of, well, the question, what is a child? What is a child who looks 4 but acts like 40? You know, what is that figure? You're looking at a child on the screen, but what is this thing called a child at that moment? And the kind of travelling that takes place around age in some of our representations of childhood, which I think are really, really interesting. There were so many other points that I was at. There's so much about identification and imitation in relationship to the screen, the way in which the child can become a figure of cultural anxiety. We use the child to create public panics quite often. So much of that was in there that I thought was very, very interesting. I don't think I want to say too much more. I mean, the question of technology in childhood is one that I'm really interested in, and the way in which technology shapes time and therefore shapes our thinking about children. And I suppose, yeah, there's one other little vignette that I think might be useful for sort of pulling some of the themes together that we've just been hearing about. And that's an advert. I mean, to go back to the sort of origins of cinema that you were talking about, Chris. There was an advert in around 1910, 1911 for the then groundbreaking home cinematograph. And when I saw this advert, I had no idea that home cinema started in 1910. You know, a little handheld camera which could capture home moving images. And the advert says something like, you know, forget photography, this is where it's at, everyone, the home cinematograph is going to displace the camera, something like that. But then it says the 80-year-old in 2079 or whatever will be able to look back on his days as an infant and see himself in his infancy. And the whole advert was based around the idea of being able to travel back through your own life and see yourself as an infant, and the lure of this. And again, that seems to me one of those things that is very much there in the 3 discussions we've had today. So I'll stop there so that you've got time for questions.